Our great mate Nigel Farage, we talk to him each and every Tuesday night. He's in London. We've got a bit more time to talk than usual, which I'm very pleased to do because we've got some detail here we've got to get through about this Trump trial and what's playing out in New York now. The idea that he could go to jail for not the payments but the accounting of payments seems to me to be such a low piece of hanging fruit to go after a former president. But it's not just that. It's about forcing him to sit there every day. It's about analysing his every movement. It's about the psychological warfare of him having to watch every single thing he does, knowing that that goes out into the court of public opinion. What did you think of opening arguments?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a character assassination, isn't it? And you're quite right. He's got to sit there through this for, 6 whole weeks, which is agony. And he, notoriously, like all entrepreneurs, he wants to one side of A4, make a decision, move on. So it's going to be very tough. They've even stopped him going to his own son's graduation, which struck me as being pretty mean. The opening arguments are that a couple of women were paid off using Trump Organization money, to which I have to say, so what? That isn't a crime. It's an accounting misdemeanor. So why is this in court? Well, the argument goes that the misdemeanor impacted upon the general election that took place in 2016, and therefore, if one act affects another, that then becomes a crime. I tell you what, Paul, it's a stretch. I mean, in terms of a legal argument, it is a real stretch. Now, clearly, he will be asked the question, did he know these payments were being made? Were they made on his behalf by an accountant? There is no way he goes to prison over this. No way whatsoever. Quite where they managed to find a jury of 12 in New York City who had neutral opinions about Donald Trump, I don't know for the life of me. He'll probably finish up with a fine of some kind, but it is the 6 weeks out of the election campaign, the 6 weeks, as you mentioned in the introduction, of every micro movement that he makes being analysed in the press. It is a horrendous, humiliating thing to put a former president through, but that's where America's got to. It is a fully politicised judiciary, very badly in need of reform.
But also, I'm trying to think of, there are plenty of high-profile cases that come and go, right? But I'm really trying to think about the types of cases that normally result in this sort of absolute minutiae of the defendant and what they're doing. Now, of course, the defendant really doesn't play the role in the trial because unless they choose to take to the stand, it's all happening around them. And it's sort of, frankly, serial killer level stuff where they turn around as if this is, the person who's been hiding for 20 years and the trail of bodies that are, like that, but because that's the level of derangement that has built up around this bloke, right? Which is, it's one thing to say, okay, I disagree with his policies, I find his rhetoric, I don't like that, all of that stuff. But for these people, they have really built him up to a figure of that's so odious that you would cover it like it was a serial killer.
Yes, you'd have thought this was sort of crime of the century that he's committed. I am convinced that my reaction to it, which is a shrug of the shoulders and a so what, I'm convinced that is where most of middle America will be. I don't think, whatever the outcome of these proceedings at the end of 6 weeks, will make any difference or do any damage to his electoral prospects whatsoever. Unless he was to crack in some way under the strain and get up in the court and explode or do something like that, which of course is what they'll try and do.
Yes.
They will be attempting to provoke him the whole time. So he just has to keep his composure and get through the agony of the next few weeks. And I'm very confident that he will. And I've been with him a couple of times this year already. I have to say, he is as mentally fit, if not more so, than he was way back in 2016. He will come through this.
Yeah, I also think one of the things with all of this obsessive conversation about the physicality is that if he turns around and says, "Oh, the reason I fell asleep is because I have sleep apnea," see, he's as bad as Joe Biden. If the reason he wiggled in his seat was because my back's a bit sore, see, he's as adult as Joe Biden, and then that issue gets. Yeah. So I think that's part of the nexus here too. Let's talk about the Rwanda bill slowly moving up and down in the UK Parliament. I was almost going to use exactly the same thing that came to your mind of what the metaphor was about a young bride, but anyway, let's get to the idea here of whether the legislation is going to stand. Rishi Sunak is out and about, running about and saying, stop the boats, stop the boats. What happens in the end here? Meantime, 5 people have died trying to get into the country via the channel.
Yeah, 5 people died this morning. That takes it to 14 this year that have drowned in the English Channel. That number will go up. There's a couple of hundred on their way to us literally as we speak, being escorted, would you believe, by the French Navy. I mean, the French Navy are doing the job of the traffickers for them. It's quite extraordinary. Rishi's passed this piece of legislation, but it's not going to work. And it won't work because we signed up in the early 1950s to the European Convention on Human Rights. It was an agreement intended to stop what happened to the Jews in Austria and Germany in the 1930s and led to the Holocaust. And of its time, it seemed like a good idea. But Mr. Blair incorporated that into British law via something called the Human Rights Act. And as soon as people are about to be put on a plane and sent to Rwanda, what will happen is that piece of UK legislation will be used, brought to British judges. I doubt anyone will go to Rwanda. Some may go, but it won't be in big enough numbers to stop the flood that's coming. And all of this has been brought to a head because I raised this 4 years ago. I was the one going out in the English Channel filming this when mainstream media literally wouldn't talk about it. And now Rishi Sunak is basing the whole general election on his Rwanda policy. He's promised within 10 to 12 weeks that the planes will fly, which makes me now think that our general election will not be in October or November as predicted. I think it's coming at the end of June or early July. It's his only way out.
Yeah, interesting to say. Well, you're always right about these things, so we will follow you certainly on the policy and we'll find out what happens when it comes to the date. Do appreciate it.